Hi, my name is LaRhonda Julien. Welcome to the IEEE Women in Engineering podcast. We rise together, charting pathways to STEM careers, where we share leadership insights, career advancement strategies, and innovative technology topics. Our guest today is Randy Hain. Randy is founder of Serviam Partners and co-founder of the Leadership Foundry. His over 30-year career in senior leadership roles, corporate talent, and executive search has made him a sought-after executive coach for senior leaders at some of the best-known U.S. and global companies. He has authored 13 award-winning books, and in addition to his success in business, Randy is a proud husband, father, son, and community leader. Randy, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure, LaRhonda. I always enjoy spending time with you. So this is a gift.
You're too kind. Randy, IEEE's core values include global community building, where we cultivate active, vibrant, and honest exchange among cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary global communities, and partnership, where we invest in training and development to enhance capabilities, empower individuals who can then go on to make a positive difference. You are, among other things, an executive coach, a good mentor, and a leader.
Thank you.
Individuals in those roles typically provide opportunities and encourage the potential for partnership and global community building in the individuals that they serve as mentors and leaders and coaches too. In line with that, a quote that supports this is one that you yourself provided from Stephen Covey's Primary Greatness.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "On one occasion, I asked my father what he thought a good definition of leadership was. He said, 'Leadership is communicating to another person their worth and potential so clearly they are inspired to see it themselves.'" Randy, can you tell us more about how you help leaders to see their potential?
Yeah, listen, I love that question, and that's a favorite quote of mine as well. You know, I think about the approach that I've always taken to my formal executive coaching, which spans about 14 years, but also when I was a senior executive as a coaching leader. And I think the way that I've always approached it, and I probably picked this up from my father and mother, is I'm just insanely curious about people. And I don't think I can offer help to anyone until I get to know them. So I begin from a place of genuine curiosity. Tell me more, help me understand, unpack that for me. And what I'm really trying to get at is understanding what you think, what you believe, what you're all about, but also what you believe are some of the obstacles to your success. And once we've had these frank conversations, and if I've done a good job of listening, we probably have a good idea of the areas that we want to focus time on to help you address. So I think it begins just with this authentic curiosity. Tell me about yourself. What's going on? Tell me, have you achieved the success that you want in life or not? And the more I ask and then get quiet and listen, the more people have a tendency to tell me everything. And then once it's on the table, we can do something about it. That's a very simple approach that's always served me well.
I love that. In your book, Practical Virtue, you focus on helping people become leaders worth following by sharing best practices, identifying their virtues, working on soft skills, and applying what they have learned. This begs the question, at least to me,
Sure.
are leaders born or made?
I am 100% in the made camp. I know leaders from all walks of life, and I can't point to anyone that was just born into being a natural leader. I think the way that you're raised by your parents, your family, your relationships with your friends, your work experiences, absolutely the adversity that you've faced in life and overcome, how you've dealt with success, all of these factors, experiences, things that enter into your daily life are what really help shape you as a leader. And then a lot of the things that I really admire in the greatest leaders are skills and attributes that they've picked up, again, from their parents, their families, their friends, maybe their faith, whatever it is. So when I look at the leaders that I admire, I can look at each of them and absolutely see a series of experiences and learnings that help them become great leaders. So I'm in the made camp.
Awesome. In one of your recent blog posts, you talked about what you're going to do differently in your fourth quarter.
Mm.
Would you please explain the fourth quarter concept to us?
Sure. I'm not an expert at it, but I'm in it. So I guess I'll kind of give you my own experience. I think that there are two ways to look at the fourth quarter. There's purely the mathematical, which is the first 25 years of your life is the first quarter. Second is 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100. But I think where our culture has taken the fourth quarter conversation when it comes to business is it begins more at the age of around 60. So it's more of a 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and then 60 to 80. I just turned 60 last week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm excited about this phase of life. I'm still actively engaged in my businesses and writing books and doing work that I absolutely love. My family obviously is in a different state. I've got two adult sons now. My wife and I are in our 32nd year of marriage. Grandkids are hopefully down the road. So I'm in a different stage of life, but it's just different, still exciting though, maybe more exciting than ever, because what I'm bringing to the fourth quarter is a lot of experience, hopefully more maturity, I hope more wisdom. But I'm coming into this feeling as equipped as I've ever been to really tackle life and what comes at me. So that's how I look at the fourth quarter, and I'm excited about it.
I like that you have made to that concept. Do you think that changing it the way that you did, were you almost adding that extra quarter based on life expectancy now, that fourth quarter energizes you, gives you an opportunity to reflect, and you know that the game is not over? You still have another quarter left.
Yeah, I think a lot of my observations are informed from the work that I do for a living. So 5, 6, 7 hours a day, I'm engaged with senior executive men and women all over the world. That's what I do for a living. So as I'm engaged in these conversations, I meet a lot of very successful people. Typically, for what I do, they're over the age of 40, although I do work with some early career professionals. But a lot of these folks have this mindset that puzzles me. Well, when I retire, I can't wait to start living. And if you retire at 67 with the age expectancy for men of 77 or 78, that's not a lot of time to really live. So I embrace the mindset of I want to have a great career and I want to live and enjoy life. So I savor every moment personally and professionally, and I encourage everybody that I work with to do the same. You don't have to wait to 67 to do it. So I've had this mindset for over a decade. My wife and I enjoy life, but I also have a very busy career that keeps me going, and I love the work I do. But to me, it's all interconnected, it's all integrated, and I want to enjoy every minute of it, but I'm not going to wait until I'm 67 to start.
Absolutely. I think I'm going to borrow that shift and do that pivot myself. That's a great way to think about moving forward.
I think a thing to think about, LaRhonda, just to add on to that, is all of us should ask ourselves, are you living to work or working to live? And I hope that we're in the second camp. When I was in my 20s, I used to live to work, but I got wisdom and a wake-up call, maybe a 2x4 in my late 20s, and I started really thinking about working to live, and that's a much better way to live.
Speaking of coaching and living in success, Nick Saban is quoted as saying, a good coach can alter the trajectory of a life. When, in your estimation, when do you start planning your C-suite goal? Is it eliminate Stan childhood dream? Does it manifest itself while you're interning in college? Does it show up as you're navigating your way through your career? Or maybe it could be the thief of comparison sneaks in and you decide to do it because one of your friends or a peer is on that particular path. And to add on to that, does the reason matter as much as how you get there or what you do once you arrive?
That's a multifaceted question, and it's very deep, and there's so many different ways to answer it. I'll do my best. I'm going to start by maybe challenging the premise. I'm not even sure that is a goal that many people have. I work with a lot of senior leaders today that see what goes on at the C-suite, and they're not that interested based on they see the sacrifices that have to be made. So I'm not sure that everybody really even has that goal, but to kind of make your argument, let's say that you do have those aspirations. I think for many of the folks that I encounter, it probably kicks in after you've gotten into, I think, the first level of, let's call senior management, probably vice president or above. You've been successful. You've got a track record. You see that you're promotable, that people really think that you've got the opportunity to grow. And it's probably in your 30s, maybe 40s, that you start to say, maybe I can be a C-level executive. Maybe that is a goal that I want to have. I think it's usually part ambition, but it's part you feeling validated and encouraged by others that you're capable of doing it. And then it becomes a decision. What do I need to do to get there? How do I pursue that? Do I have advocates and mentors that can guide me on the journey? Am I being coached? Whatever it is. But very few people can make it to the C-suite. It's a rarefied atmosphere. But to me, my observations say 30s and 40s is when it kicks in, if it kicks in at all. But I would actually add this flavor to your question. I really admire people, not so much for wanting to pursue the C-suite. I really admire people that have a very different path. The folks that say, I want to be a great spouse. I want to be a great partner. I want to have a great family. I want to make a difference in the world. So these are people that still have a great career, an amazing career. But instead of chasing that rarefied top of the food chain ladder, C-suite you mentioned, they're more focused on being good human beings and complete human beings in relationship with others. And I really admire those people. And that's, I can tell you in my early 30s, I abandoned the pursuit of the C-suite. I was on that path. I was a senior executive in a $5 billion restaurant company. I reported to the president. That was clearly my path. But the sacrifices that my family was having to make for that work to happen, it wasn't worth it. So I went a completely different path. And I think I'm the happiest guy you'll ever meet. So there you go.
Again, the shift and the pivot helps you to be able to reframe and to look at things differently.
Yeah.
I'm sure that when you are working with those C-suite or executive individuals in those organizations, their coaching session looks a little bit different from the ones of an early career professional. Is that an accurate statement? And if so, can you talk about some of those differences?
Yeah, I think there are clear differences in the things that come to mind that make them different. Obviously, the senior level leaders I work with are informed by years of experience. They've had success and failure that they can point to as great learnings. They're probably in a different state of life personally with their relationships, maybe families. So there's a whole lot more just things to look at to inform our conversations. And they're often thinking about, I'll give you some examples. I'm stressed or burned out. I need help. I don't manage time well. Or I want the C-suite. Randy, can you help me navigate to get there? Or I'm not I'm not showing up well to my family. How do I make sure that I make them a priority? Those discussions tend to be very different. Now, when I deal with an early career professional, they don't know what they don't know. So they're filled with curiosity. They want to know the why. Sometimes they don't even know the questions to ask. So the common theme to both of those types of engagements is I come back to asking questions. I want to know from the early career professional, what are some of the things that you're afraid of? What are some of the things that you feel are scary that you want to talk about? I make it clear that I'm a safe place and we can talk about anything. And they often want to talk about, how do I build relationships? How do I build a network? How do I talk to senior leaders that don't even know who I am? So again, very different stresses and interest. But at the end of the day, the way that I show up with both is with curiosity and listening.
I like that you also build in that psychological safety,
Oh, yeah.
providing them with that safe place to be able to share and engage and learn.
Yeah, you have to make it safe for people. And I would say to any leader listening to this podcast, your job, one of your primary jobs, is to create psychological safety for everyone around you. If everyone is telling you that you're amazing or you get no feedback at all, you should be very nervous. So make it safe for people to tell you that you screwed up, that you made a mistake. You've got to make it safe for people to give you feedback.
Now, we talked a little bit about those early career professionals and the executives in a corporate context.
Mhm.
How does that look different if you're in a family business or if this is a business that you started?
I do work with some clients today that are entrepreneurs that started their own businesses, men and women that have built very successful enterprises. And I think the biggest difference, there are a lot of similarities certainly around leadership and people and things that would be very, very common. But I think for those business owners, their livelihood, their personal stake is obviously much greater. When you work for a big company, you're not necessarily thinking about how to make payroll. But if you own a business, you are thinking about making payroll. You're thinking about, is my business going to survive the next recession? You're thinking about, what's the legacy that I'll leave with this business that I founded and love? So I think that there's just ownership stakes that just make it a very different kind of engagement. Again, the leadership stuff is very common between both, but it's a little different with owners and people that work in those kinds of businesses. They're a little bit more invested personally. I work with one business owner, and his name is on the front door of the business. It's his company, literally named after his family. And he cares
Mhm.
deeply about that business and his people in a way that's almost patriarchal. It's almost fatherly. And it's very endearing, but he cares as a father does about his people. So that's a different dynamic than with Coca-Cola senior executive.
Randy, I've seen your posts about engagements with different types of audiences, from sports to Fortune 500 companies. How does your approach to coaching with them differ across industries?
I don't want to sound, I don't want this to sound like a cliche, but I really think that the work I do is very industry agnostic. I'm not concerned in the least if I've not, had experience in your industry. Now, having done this for many years and having coached thousands of people, I feel like I've touched just about every industry. But honestly, in the work I do, it's almost irrelevant. The only time I would say that it makes a difference is not in the types of industry, but the difference between for-profit and nonprofit organizations. There's often a very big difference. I'm about to start working with a senior leader at a very big Atlanta nonprofit. And the things that he is dealing with are somewhat unique to the nonprofit space. The industries don't matter, but sometimes there is that difference between profit and nonprofit. So again, I come into it almost with a breezy indifference in terms of where you've been, and I can usually go into my bag of tricks and say, you know what, I've worked with someone that's kind of like you, but nonprofit and for-profit is the big sort of line of demarcation for me.
You talked about differences. Let's talk about disruptions.
Mhm.
COVID and AI, how are they impacting some of the conversations that you are having with your clients?
Yeah, wow. You named two of the biggest, and there's certainly some differences. Let me start with COVID. COVID was interesting. Most of my clients were not necessarily concerned about economic survival. They were concerned about how to take good care of their people. How do we navigate a virtual workplace, which was new for most of us? How do we do that well and still stay in business and get to beyond? That was a different, but quite frankly, looking back, a fairly workable type of dilemma. And I think most businesses figured it out. But the thing that's different between that and AI is COVID, we weren't necessarily looking at mass layoffs and careers in jeopardy. But then you come to present day, and the conversations I have with my leaders today are very interesting. There is a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of burnout. The senior leaders I encounter are probably being asked to do a whole lot more with less. They are having to make the draconian decisions to cut often dozens, hundreds, thousands of jobs to replace them with AI bots. And I've got one particular client that's having to go through that now. And the cost of people it weighs on your soul. So I think leaders are really dealing with, how do I navigate in a very AI focused environment? We love the productivity and the earnings, so that looks great, but there's a people side that is really causing a lot of distress. And then certainly those people that are not at the top of the food chain, that are not senior leaders, they're just worried about survival. I'll give you the example of my own son, my younger son. He has a marketing degree. He was going to go into sports marketing. His first job out of college was fantastic, but then AI really started to gobble up a lot of entry-level marketing roles. He had to make a pivot over to human resources 10 months ago, because I would not advise him or anybody to go into marketing right now. So he made a pivot to something that was a little bit more focused on people and relationships that would allow him to grow his career. But I think a lot of young people are having to make some really tough decisions right now about how they pursue their careers. That's probably more than you wanted to know, but that's kind of the difference in the two conversations.
I appreciate the perspective. I appreciate you sharing your experience. I know that it will be helpful to the audience, and we do learn from stories.
Yes.
We do learn by sharing. We also learn and grow from a lot of the things that we've talked about here today, from that relationship building, from that partnering, from shifting or pivoting. There's two other things that we learn and grow from that you've talked about a lot, and that is candor and vulnerability.
Two of my favorites.
Candor and vulnerability appear to have contributed to many honest and productive conversations and lots of the great work that you've been able to share with us. What is your formula for building rapport and giving good feedback?
So I mentioned it earlier, but I'll double down on it a little bit here. I always try to practice sincere, insatiable curiosity. I love to ask questions. And I'm not just asking to check a box. I really do want to know. If I ask you about, tell me where you grew up, I'm really interested. Where did you grow up? So I'm always trying to draw my audience, whoever it is, into sincere, authentic dialogue. And it begins by asking really good questions. But you have to also be a good listener. Ask the question, but then you have to listen. Let me draw the distinction. If you're listening just until it's your time to talk, that's not listening. You need to listen. You need to process. Maybe ask a follow-up question. Oh, LaRhonda, tell me more about that, to really demonstrate that you're hearing that person. And I began with curiosity and listening, because if you can establish with another person that, wow, Randy's really interested, he wants to know, we have built some trust there, then that creates the opportunity for us to maybe have some candid dialogue, respectfully candid dialogue. And I love vulnerability. I think it's a forgotten leadership superpower. But I find that if I'm willing to bear my weaknesses and the things that I'm not good at and my failures to you, it's much more likely that you're going to share the same with me. I am a sum of my experiences, my failures and my successes, not just my successes. So I need to be able to tell you about those things that are, maybe are uncomfortable for some to talk about. I'm very comfortable talking about it. But LaRhonda, the fact that I have some of the most rich conversations because I'm willing to talk about struggle and challenge, and that gives people permission to do the same. So maybe more than you wanted, but that's my formula.
I like it. I like it. In your latest book, A Different Take, you challenge complacency and conformity
Mhm.
and embrace change and service to others as part of what helps us thrive across all stages of our careers. You note that the chapters are quick reads, and they are, that busy professionals can look to for insight and guidance. Do you want to share a little bit more about A Different Take with us?
Sure, yeah. It was a fun book to write. The full title is A Different Take, Thoughtful Insights to Help You Thrive at Work and in Life. And it's 26 leadership topics. I do, by the way, it's funny. I think we both love to read, and my home office filled with books right now. But my clients are very busy. My audience is very busy. So I typically write 5-minute chapters. I'm going to get to the point really quickly. I'm going to tell you true stories and be very authentic about why I think it's important. And I'll share my stories or others. But then I get to actionable best practices and I challenge you to go do something with the information. But a lot of those topics came out of my different take, my willingness to ask questions. It's funny. I think the comedian W.C. Fields said back in the 30s or 40s, I would never be a member of a club that would have me as a member. And I've always thought about that because I'm kind of an outsider insider. I'm not really comfortable with status quo. I don't really want to be in the big group. I like to kind of be on the margins, and I just like to look, observe, ask questions. And I'm willing to ask hard questions like, why are we doing it this way? Is this the only way to do it? Is there a better method? And I think that respectful curiosity that I bring to life allows me to look at things that maybe we've all said, this is the only way to do it. And I'm the guy that's going to say, why are we doing it that way? So the book is about looking at very common challenges that all of us have faced. And I just try to give you a different way to see how to solve them or think about them or reframe your thinking about them. So I love the book. I love how it's being received. And I'm super grateful that people are really, really connecting with the work.
You have definitely given us a different way to look at things this time that we have shared together. Would you also finally share with us what we can expect to see next from you?
Well, I'm working on a book about mentorship. And I have a really firm belief that we need to blow up and reinvent how we think about mentorship. My generation has a really tough issue. We tend to come at mentorship as speaking from the mountaintop and dispensing wisdom. Okay, young person, here's all the things you need to know. And that paradigm, that approach does not work anymore. So what I really want to see mentors and mentees do is come together in dialogue, in relationship, get to know each other, learn from each other. Mentors need to learn from mentees. I've got 6 mentees right now. I learn something from them every time we're together. So I think it's about how do we rethink mentorship? What are best practices? And I'm expecting that book to come out next spring. Stay tuned.
Perfect. That is exciting. I have seen some of your other work through your blog posts and through the podcast that you've done about generational learning. I'm sure that the book about mentorship, you're going to factor some of that in as well, because that knowledge sharing goes both ways, as you mentioned.
Absolutely. And, I always say that if one person buys the book, it's a success. So if you buy the book, we'll consider it a success.
It will be a success. Randy, you teach a class at Samford University to high school freshmen. In that class, you talk to them about resume versus eulogy virtue.
Mhm.
Tell us about it.
Well, yeah, I borrowed the idea from New York Times writer David Brooks. He wrote a book that came from an essay of the same title called The Moral Bucket List. And in it, he introduced this fascinating look at two types of virtue. As we are building our careers, in our teens, 20s, maybe 30s, we're all building a resume. And you're daily pursuing growing your career, buying a bigger house, starting a family, whatever it is that is part of growing your life. That's the resume part of your life. But at some point, he argues that we need to make a pivot to pursuing eulogy virtue. And eulogy virtue is when you're no longer on this earth, what are people going to say about you? At your funeral, what will they say? I certainly hope it's not, she had a great career, because that's a tombstone that would really not really have a lot of meaning. It needs to be something more substantive of, she was a great spouse, mother, career executive, gave back to the community. We want to see a life that is full and rich. That's something that you're proud for people to say at your funeral. So eulogy virtue versus practical, this idea of resume virtue is interesting and fascinating, and it's a great way to kind of guide your life.
Randy, thank you so much for joining us on IEEE Women in Engineering podcast. We rise together, charting pathways to STEM careers. We appreciate you helping us to learn, lead, and inspire in a more impactful way, because when women rise in STEM, industries shift, power moves, and the world changes. Until next time, Randy, keep rising.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.